oftentimes very triggering. It's very scary. It becomes this big monster that we stick our head in the sand and avoid. And money avoidance has led to any number of foibles for people in business. And it's a shameful thing, especially for lawyers. So I want lawyers to understand when they think about money is that everyone has a money story. You don't have to go to a psychologist and unpack every single story you have ever had about money in order to get much better at money. You just have to find the system that will allow you to deal with it in order to get to the people that can create it for you and that can run it with you.
Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and I'm stoked for the conversation today because we have another three-peat. Actually, I don't know. The episode I recorded right before this one was a three-peat guest, but I actually don't know when my team is releasing each one. Presumably, you will have already heard it, but maybe you didn't. But anyway, I'm excited because repeat guests means a couple of things. Number one, they've been with me for a while. Number two, they're worth bringing back. And number three, they helped us to build this. They helped us to create this podcast. They shared the message. They shared the word about it. And some of you may have come in from their last interview or the interview before. So we're super excited about this one. And this is somebody who is a force of nature in the legal space. If you don't know of her, you should. And you probably do know of her. I learned about her very shortly after entering the legal space early in 2019. Well, really the end of 2018, but early of 2019. And the nice thing is that well, at the time, I don't know where she is now, but at the time we were not far from each other. We met up for lunch. I have been to her office. Just a wonderful person to know and to have been a part of her journey because she's just, taken names throughout the whole process. And she's got a book coming out, which we're excited to support and talk about. But let me tell you who this is. So our guest is Allison Williams, otherwise known as the Crushing Chaos Queen. So she is, she was here in 2019. Let me pull up the right one. June of 2019. Now just so you understand, we started our podcast March of 2019. So this is episode 20. And we're now at approaching 600 probably, or like in the mid 500s. So really, Allison's like an OG here on the podcast, but Crushing Law Firm Chaos with Allison Williams, episode 20. You can find it at profitwithlaw.com/020. We then highlighted her in 2021 when we replayed a Q&A with her and Neil Tyra from our 2019 Law Firm Growth Summit, and that is called Summit Q&A Replay Tools for Productivity with Allison Williams and Neil Tyra, episode 176, and that is profitwithlaw.com/176. And then Allison was back in 2024. That was May of 2024 for episode 431, Crushing Your Marketing Chaos, 5 Easy Steps to Consistent Recurring Revenue with Allison Williams. And you can catch that one at profitwithlaw.com/431. Now, before I bring Allison onto the show, actually, I have the official bio, right? I'm not going to read the whole thing. We summarized it a bit. Allison C. Williams is an international speaker, distinguished New Jersey attorney, best-selling author, managing partner of Williams Law Group, as well as the CEO of Law Firm Mentor, an international business coaching company for law firm owners. She is a fellow of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers and a recognized leader in child maltreatment evidence and trial practice, with appearance on the Katie Couric Show and features in major national publications, including the Huffington Post. Since 2018, she has consistently been named among New Jersey's top 100 super lawyers, top 50 women super lawyers, and best lawyers for families by her clients. Her business success includes Law Firm 500 recognition, multiple Stevie Award finalist honors, and being named one of NJ Biz's top 50 women in business and top 25 leading women entrepreneurs. Is that all, Allison? Through the Law Firm Mentor and Allison Speaks, LLC, she teaches nationwide, embodies the hashtag Never Stop Growing motto, and promotes her chaos, C period, H period, A period, O period, S period, trademark formula for sustainable success and a well-rounded life. Woo, Allison, I am dizzy. That is a lot. So really incredible accomplishments from this, like I said, powerhouse in the legal industry. Now, before we jump into a conversation, I bring Allison onto the show. I'm just going to share with you real quick. We have introduced a 2-day workshop that we are doing for non-clients. So this is people who, you're not working with us yet, but you're lost. You're trying to figure out how to get to that seemingly unattainable $100,000 months. That $100,000 month could be in revenue or take home profit, whatever you want to call it. But if that's something you're striving for and trying to get to, what you're missing is the clarity of how to get there, the actual action plan to put into place. And what we're going to do in 2 days together, and this is in person, you got to show up. This is coming from the virtual summit guy, right? We're doing in person 2 days, and you will leave with the plan of action to get your business to that $100,000 a month. You can find out more information at profitwithlaw.com/LFG 2026. That's Law Firm Growth 2026, or Let's F and Go. Thank you to a past guest who thought that that's what it really stood for and told me, but that's the way you'll remember it. Profitwithlaw.com/LFG 2026. Allison, welcome to the show.
Oh my God, Moshe, thank you so much for having me back. And thank you for all of those shout outs because I did not recall that I was so early on in the podcast. I just remembered, I did remember our lunch. I did remember having you to my office. I did remember hiring you to actually help me with Profit First. I remembered a lot of great things about you, but I did not actually remember those things. So thank you for sharing those.
You're very welcome. And yeah, trip down memory lane, but we totally need to reconnect and have another steak lunch or dinner.
Absolutely.
Although, if I remember correctly, I think you ordered seafood. But anyway, let's jump into a conversation because, interestingly, your book covers a topic that I am quite familiar with, and that is the financial side of running a business, running a law firm. And what's interesting is that it is the thing that we talk about the least, right?
Mm.
And it's kind of like, well, we don't talk about our dirty laundry, right? Like and I don't know, we were raised not to talk about sex and money, right? That's just the way it is.
Sex,
But
money, and
politics
religion.
is
Those are the
okay, right?
things.
Like we can talk about politics, but sex and money we don't talk about. Um, so let's have a conversation around money. So first of all, you work with a ton of law firms out there. You wrote the book, right? So what are you finding is the number one cardinal sin that's happening in law firms when it comes to managing finances, collecting money, charging for money, all of that? Like, if you look at your whole portfolio of people you've worked with, what do you think is the number one thing that's happening that if people would just know this, things would be different?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of different challenges at different sizes, So the kind of the cardinal sin for the what I'll call is the startup folks, if you're under $500,000, these are the people that almost invariably stick their head in the sand, don't have a budget, don't look at the numbers, or they look at the wrong numbers too much. They spend their time going into the bank account every single day, fixating on every dollar in and every dollar out, thinking that somehow knowing a number is meaningful for purposes of running a business. And the numbers that they're looking at are oftentimes flawed. And then once you get a little bit more size underneath your belt, but you're still underneath $1 million, so maybe $500,000 to $1 million, these are the folks that you tend to start to understand money a little bit more. You start to get a little bit more consistency of the money in your business. But what oftentimes happens is that you don't plan far enough out. So you say, okay, here's what I need this month, or here's what I need this quarter. You're not thinking about the malpractice premium that's going to skyrocket because of the number of people you hired 6 months from now, 8 months from now. You're not planning for the raises and the bonuses that you're wanting to give next year, or the strategic hire that you need to make that's going to require a significant amount of outlay, like a COO or a CFO in your business. So oftentimes these people have some level of plan, but their plan is not sophisticated enough. Then once we get into the seven-figure folks, these are the folks that they have their money on a system and they're looking at their numbers, but oftentimes they're not really getting enmeshed in the numbers enough to have a gut sense of what's right for their business. So I always say, you need to have a system and a plan for everything in your business. And money is one of the most important areas to systematize. But beyond that, you do need to have a fundamental awareness and understanding of the life cycle of money in your business. And so that means your practice area is probably going to generate money in spurts. You're probably going to have some really high season times where money is flooding in and you have a lot of work. And then you're going to have some lower season times. And in order to avoid the reactivity that comes with feeling there's too much to do, we got to turn off marketing, or there's not enough to do, we have to get really strident and really stressed. In order to avoid that reactionality, you really need to have a fundamental understanding of, this is normal. At this time of the year, we tend to have fewer cases. It'll pick back up again at this time of the year. This is what we should do with our marketing to level that out. And if you don't have that dialed in, then we oftentimes look at numbers and we make poor judgments because the numbers are telling us a story that's incompatible with what our lived experience is, and we don't understand how to reconcile the two.
Yeah, it's really, really true. And the other thing that happens is that we understand profitability, but a lot of people don't understand cash flow. And there's a difference between profitability and cash flow. And we play mind games with ourselves. Like I signed up 10 clients this month. Each client is worth $10,000. I have a $100,000 month. But then when we look at the business, you had only 10 grand come in. What happened? Right? Or you had $100,000 come in, your expenses are only 50,000, but you had 100,000 go out. What happened?
Right.
Right? So there's a lot of things that happen with cash flow that are different or don't correlate to what's currently happening in the business from a client acquisition, revenue acquisition standpoint, and also from a spending money or expenses standpoint. And understanding that you might have debt service that's happening. You might have a lifestyle that you need to feed from the business that you're not considering. Like, sometimes firm owners, they pay themselves on payroll and they write a paycheck and they're like, oh, that was just an employee. Well, yeah, well, you should treat it that way. But the reality is that you paid yourself, right? So we got to look at that in this whole concept of looking at the money. But you're right. When somebody is cash tight, then they're checking the bank account every morning, right? They're worried about paying their bills. They're worried about where that dollar is coming from. They're worried about paying their own bills, right? Like, is there going to be enough left over for me to pay my bills? And what do you think is the inflection point when somebody can transition away from that? There's a follow-up question to that, but let's start there. Where do you think the magical number is that when a business gets to a certain level of maturity, the firm owner should be able to step away from worrying about every dollar? Not, I mean, you already advised don't worry about every dollar. That shouldn't be where your focus is. But I think the reality of the situation sometimes drives that behavior. So, what level of business do you think you should be able to be away from that?
So I would love to give you a number because I think that that's what you're asking for. But in my experience, giving a number is almost fantastical. It's kind of like wishful thinking
Right.
because I'll give my own personal story as an example. I left a law firm and I already had a reputation. I already had a book of business. So in my first year in business, I generated about $700,000. Well, I was a higher revenue firm for the solo small law firm space. However, I was a very immature business owner because I didn't know a lot of the things that were necessary in order to have a good profit plan. I had profit, I had revenue, but it happened to happen. It wasn't something that I planned to happen. It wasn't something that I systematized. So in that scenario, if you had asked, well, you have this much money, I would expect that you would have a bookkeeper. I would expect that you would have an accountant. I would expect that you would have quarterly tax payments going out. Your expectations would be completely unmet by the reality of my business. But most people start someplace. It usually is not at that place, it usually is smaller. And at some point, they mature. So it really depends on where you start. If you go out and start your law firm and you already have some level of revenue coming in, you have some consistency of clients, you're cranking along at a $200,000 book when you start, you're probably going to get to sophistication probably a lot sooner than someone who starts at zero and kind of has to get out of the mud and really focus their energy on generating clients, because that person is probably eating everything that they generate quite literally. And so it's going to depend. But if I were to look at what I would say is kind of the normative data, if we look across Law Firm Mentor and even some studies like the Clio Trends report can give you some indication of this, you're probably going to see somewhere around $250,000 is where, if most firms started out, if the owner started out with very little client base before they got here. And they started just kind of hustling and working their way up. Around 250 is where you're going to start to see some level of awareness that kicks in, where we start to put some systems around our finances. They aren't necessarily sophisticated, but we at least start to bring in outside players. We start to get bookkeepers, we start to get accountants, we start to get real strategic advice. And that's where you start to see things get much better for people.
Yeah, love it. We're seeing something similar, and like you said, right? Like it's not putting a number on it. It's really like what, and honestly, it's like it's a behavior, right? So we have to build better habits around the behavior. But if it's kind of like if I want to lose weight and I decide I'm not going to eat cookies, but I don't find something better to eat, I'm going to be hungry. I'm going to eat cookies, right? So we have to have another system in place to figure out how we're doing and to manage our cash so that we're not checking the bank account. So it is a combination of maturities, having the right system, and then also having enough money to go around, right? When during the course of business growth, right? Like I presume, I mean, some people want to stay a solo; they just want to be maxed out, right? But a lot of law firms have a vision of growing beyond themselves, right? So how do you suggest that somebody navigate the financial piece of growing into the next version or scaling into the next version of their business where the current cash flow doesn't support the new vision?
Oh, God, that is it's a brilliant question because I mean it really is. I think it's in the minds of most lawyers that want to grow. It's the I want more, but I can't afford, right? That
Correct.
thinking. And so, what I always tell people to do is the first thing that you have to conceptualize, you have to understand this at your core before you do anything, is that every role should be profitized in a business. That means you shouldn't look at your business as a container of, I have X dollars and I am allocating it to the people here. So, do I have enough left over to get another person? You should always be thinking about how can I bring people in, myself included, into a business and structure what they do at the price point that they do it for the compensation for which they are going to do it in a way that I have profit in my business. That is the people that are here and the people that are coming in. Once you fundamentally understand that, you can afford a lot more than you think you can. Because you're not going to hire a person and immediately pay them $80,000. You're going to hire a person, you're going to have to make payroll with that person's increased compensation. And the question then becomes, how do I do that with the resources that I have? Sometimes that's a timing issue. Sometimes that is a short term debt issue. Sometimes that's an allocation of current resources. Sometimes that's hiring a person who already brings revenue with them. That's hiring somebody who actually has a little bit more skin in the game in terms of their own book of business. And more often than not, I tell people you should be hiring the most adult person that you can to perform this role. We don't do baby lawyers for our first hire. We don't go out and get the cheapest labor for our first hire because you honestly cannot afford the cheapest labor that is available. You need the more experienced person who can immediately hit the ground running because they can get you to profit that much faster if you hire strategically well.
You know, it's interesting because I used to make statements like that also, like we don't hire baby lawyers for your, actually, it took me 2 years working with lawyers to finally get that refined where I was like emphatically like, no, this is a cardinal sin. You cannot hire an inexperienced attorney as your first attorney hire, right? But what's interesting is as I work with larger and larger clients, and I have one client now that has approaching 400 employees and 40 plus attorneys, right? They don't hire baby lawyers. So
Hmm.
like, it's um
I'm curious
at
about the
every
why of that. Is that a we
oh
don't want to invest
it
the
it's
time in
very
someone
it's
that's going to
very
leave?
expensive. It's very expensive. So people think, oh, I'm going to hire a brand. What is the purpose of hiring a brand new attorney? So it's altruistic, like, oh, I want to teach the next generation, or I want to hire somebody who's going to learn from me, or it's I'm trying to save money. So instead of bringing in somebody who I'm going to pay 150, I'm going to bring in somebody who I'm going to pay 70 to 80, and and
Ah,
we're going to get
there
them
is
there.
another reason though. There's the reason that you left out, which is the one that a lot of people don't speak to, but it's the false assumption that you're going to hire somebody and the loyalty that is going to pay off and you acculturating this person into our profession is going to result in a longer term employee, because a lot of lawyers are very resistant to change and they think this is going to prevent turnover or lessen the burden of turnover. To the contrary, a less experienced lawyer knows less of what they want and is thus
Right.
more likely to leave to look for something different, not because you weren't great, but because they don't know what else is out there.
Yeah. You're even making the argument stronger, but the reality is that most most firm owners don't understand the math of what it takes to take somebody who has no experience and get them to be an experienced attorney. And if you take the amount of time that that takes and what productivity was wasted, that could have had you could have somebody being productive within 60 to 90 days of their hire, probably even shorter, right? Like 6 weeks probably is the longest I would take for an experienced attorney to come in and actually be doing their own work on their own without being watched over, versus needing to take away somebody else's productivity to oversee the new person and then have this long extended time frame of them getting up to speed. And then to your point, right? Like, I mean, loyalty can cut both ways. You can have somebody who comes in as a baby and they're very loyal because you mentored them and taught them. But you can also have somebody who comes in with experience and has the best experience possible working for you after having experienced other employers who didn't give them as good of an experience. And that creates a level of loyalty that you're just not going to get from anybody else because they don't know what else is there. It's kind of like if you marry the first girl that you meet or you marry the first boy that you meet, you're always questioning what else is out there because there's something there's other possibilities. But if you tasted the variety of what's available and now you settle down with somebody, it's a much more mature relationship because you now know what else, what you know how good you have it, right? So I kind of feel like you have all of that at play, but ultimately the final the where we arrive at is okay. You need to hire somebody experienced, which makes the financial question even harder, right? Because now I need to bring somebody in who's expecting a salary that might even be more than I'm earning myself. That I need to now think about bringing somebody in,
Well,
and
yes and no. So when we talk about hiring experience, people immediately go to the paycheck, right? Oh my God, this person is going to cost me $200,000. How am I ever going to be able to afford that? What I always tell people is you have to understand the capacity of your business, right? So, how does money flow in and out of your business? Oftentimes, there is lost opportunity that is not being produced right now in your business because of how you are functioning. Because you are spending your time on things that are not the highest and best use of your time. You are essentially overcompensated to do the work that a less experienced or a more experienced but lesser role could fill, such as a paralegal. Oftentimes there's associate work that is on your plate that could be done by somebody with fewer years of experience, maybe not necessarily a baby, maybe a baby, but someone with certainly less experience that could bill out at a lower hourly rate but could produce more hours. And a lot of times when people don't understand the nature of their work and the nature of their business, they don't understand that there's capacity there, and they think I have to have 1,700 billable hours or 1,800 billable hours for John Doe attorney who, in order for me to pay them $200,000 a year. And that's not the case. Once you start understanding the system of your business, you have the ability to flex and expand and contract essentially your margins. And that's really where opportunity comes. So you should always be looking at what is the profit margin that I am aiming for with my company. And then at some point, it's going to go below that when I first hire somebody to get them up to speed. And then it's going to go above that at some point when the person is in excess of capacity. We don't get there more often than not because we look at our finances as a container, right? I've got X dollars. I'm going to have X dollars even if I add another person. So that person's going to be taking away from my profit. And that's not the case if you profitize the role. So it really is functionally about understanding how to orchestrate the business in a way that produces the opportunity for someone to be hired. And that opportunity is inherently a profit creation opportunity. If you don't see it that way, you're going to create a role for somebody and then you're not going to be able to afford it because you're not going to be thinking about how to produce more from their labor.
right. Yeah, I think runway, the length of the runway is also very important when you approach this kind of decision because we think of like the annual salary of somebody as like the expense we're taking on. But what we really need to think about is how long will it take for me to profitize, in your words, right? To profitize the position, meaning, and the way I lay it out to my clients is like step one is cover the expense. Step two is make a basic profit on the expense that now is attributable to the rest of our expenses, to overhead and all that, cover the marketing. And then step three is max profit, right? So like there's three levels that I expect out of that person when they come in. And I want to make sure that my length of time it takes from when I start paying them until they're at step one, which is covering their paycheck, is as short as possible. And I think that's where, if we focus on that strategy of that plan up front, then what happens is that we now can plan for, okay, I'm going to have this expense for 6 weeks. I'm going to have this expense for 4 weeks, for 8 weeks, whatever it is. And it also gives you a place to check in very early to see if that person's a good hire, to see if that person is producing what you expected them to produce at that moment. And if they're not, to ask a question. Why? Is this fixable? Is it something we can get to very quickly, or do I need to cut ties with this and move on to the next one? We do a really poor job in when we hire people, hold on to them for way too long, hoping that we're going to somehow fix them. And we got to look at it like relationships, right? Like how long are you going to hold on to a boyfriend, girlfriend and try to fix them before you realize like they're going to be who they are and you're not going to be able to change that, and you got to move on if it doesn't, fit, check your boxes. So okay, there's so much to unpack here. We covered just one little piece of it. We talked about the way you should think about money. We talked about the fact that you need to have a mature system for it. We talked about what does this look like when you're looking to scale. We focused on people, but I think the concepts that we talked about could be for any piece of investment in your business. So if you're looking at spending some money on marketing, right? Like you need to have a clear vision of what is the profitization of that marketing. If it's not going to produce the right level for you, then you probably should move on and move on to the next thing. I think that's what the message that Allison is sharing with us. So as we come into the end of this, and unfortunately, we only we got a truncated time frame for this interview. But the good news is that there's a book coming out that is going to give you the rest of the information. It's whatever we didn't cover in these 30 minutes. You're going to be able to read it, right? So we're super excited about the release of that and the introduction of Allison's book into the marketplace. But Allison, as we close this out, there's got to be something that you think is really important for people to hear around the conversation of running your business with a focus on the financial piece of it. What do our listeners need to hear that we didn't talk about?
Oh gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Moshe. And like you said, there's a lot that's in the book, and we cover a lot of different functional areas of business. But one thing that I will say is probably the key when we talk about the financial piece, and this is the piece we didn't actually get to talk about, is really the mindset around money. And money is oftentimes very triggering, it's very scary. It becomes this big monster that we stick our head in the sand and avoid. And money avoidance has led to any number of foibles for people in business, and it's a shameful thing, especially for lawyers. So I want lawyers to understand when they think about money is that everyone has a money story. You don't have to go to a psychologist and unpack every single story you have ever had about money in order to get much better at money. You just have to find the system that will allow you to deal with it in order to get to the people that can create it for you and that can run it with you. If you allow yourself to just accept that truism, I don't like dealing with this, but I have to deal with this, and find the way that makes it most palatable for you, that's where you're going to find the most success. And again, all of this is laid out, the how of getting to these numbers and these issues. Whether you are a multiple seven-figure company pushing toward eight figures, or you are just starting out in your law firm, it's available to you in Crushing Chaos, the Law Firm Owner's Guide to More Money, More Free Time, and Less Stress, which is my book, which comes out on March 10th.
Awesome, Allison. And I think we're airing this after the book has already been released, so it's already available to you. Is there a website that you want to send the people to, or just go to Amazon and buy it? What are you doing as far as sending our listeners to get this book?
Yeah, I would tell them definitely go check it out on Amazon. That's probably the easiest way to get it. It is going to be available on our website. There's a very long URL right now that we'll have available for you to embed to your listeners. So they just click on it and learn more about the book, some of the substantive pieces there. And there's a lot of free giveaways that we give in the book in terms of diagnostics that you can use in your business. So even if you are somebody that is uncertain if what you want to do with your business is anything different than what you have, you just want to get a little bit better, there's tools and resources that are available there. But definitely check us out on lawfirmmentor.net because that's the greatest way to get to it.
Awesome, folks. We're gonna link that up, and the link to the book that Allison's gonna share with us. We're gonna make it easy for you. It's gonna be profitwithlaw.com/chaos, profitwithlaw.com/chaos. Crushing chaos is too long for me to put in there, but you may not like the fact that I made a chaos. Should I make it crushing? Should we do that? Should we do C chaos or just CC?
Choice is yours, Moshe.
It's
You and your
crushing,
team
but
have those
we're gonna do
decisions.
/chaos just to make it easy for you. But it is crushing chaos, and it's folks. It's Allison Williams. She knows what she's talking about. She's built an empire of students and at who are successful law firm practices that have just followed her guidance and achieved great results. And she's just, I mean, her law firm is a testament to it as well. Really excited about the release of the book. We can't have enough books to talk about this stuff. When you read a book, there's always something you glean from that book that's a new way of looking at things. It's a new aha. It's something you haven't seen before. And even if you only get one thing out of it, it's worth going through the read. So I encourage you to go pick it up. I have almost 3 shelf library here of books strictly written for law firms. Every single person who's written a book on law firm business or running a law firm, it's on my shelf here, and I've consumed them, not because I feel like I need to learn from someone else, but because I know that there are a lot of people out there who all have really, really good things to share. And no matter how much I know, I always have something that I'm going to learn from them, something that I'm going to pick up that I didn't think about or I didn't experience, even with all the clients that I work with. So if I'm consuming the books, you should too. Go pick up Allison's book, Crushing Chaos, and enjoy the read. Allison, it's a pleasure having you here. Really excited about the fact that we're getting to release a 3rd episode with you on it. Thank you for being with us on that journey, and we're looking forward to the next opportunity to highlight you and have more of these conversations. Folks, we're here every single Thursday with a brand new episode. If you want to be notified when they get released, make sure to hit the subscribe button on your podcast player, your YouTube channel, so this way you get notified when we go live. And if you want to check out our 2-day workshop and join us in the room and change the game for you, go to profitwithlaw.com/LFG 2026, and I'll see you in the room there. Take care. We'll see you next Thursday. Bye for now.